this computer. Hello and welcome to the Hard to Kill podcast. I'm Mark Rhodes and this series is all about resilience, overcoming adversity and inspirational humans. My guest today is Lindsay Bruce. Lindsay served 6 years with the SAS and since then he's competed in over 20 bodybuilding shows, winning a multiple of titles including Body Power, Mr. Scotland and the Welsh Grand Prix. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into his mindset, what's made him so successful in his training and his physique, and how he's utilized the lessons from his past to flourish in both his physique and his business. So let me welcome you on the show, Lindsay. How are you doing?
How you doing, Mark? Pleasure to be on here, buddy. Thanks for the invite.
Good. Not a problem whatsoever, mate. I think the listeners are going to be absolutely pumped with this one, mate, to be honest. I think we've got absolutely heaps to talk about. I think it's probably going to be a mission to keep it under an hour or so. Okay, cool. So for everyone out there listening, basically what I want to do is take on a bit of a journey, so to speak, as cliche as that sounds. And I want to understand a little bit about Lindsay, the man, prior to serving in the armed forces, what your service experience was like, and then talk about how you've been so prolifically successful, both with your physique and your business off the back of that, mate. Okay, so the first thing I would ask you, dude, is what was your kind of background and what was your history before joining the military?
Okay, so I was probably what you could say is your typical sort of candidate for the infantry and subsequently the SAS, because most of the SAS comes from the infantry background. Most of the infantry are recruited predominantly from council estates and shithole areas. I was no exception. I mean, I had a very humble upbringing. I was brought up in Fort William in Scotland, and I went from living in a caravan when I was a small child, out in the sticks, to then a council estate. And it was a good upbringing. I mean, we had a loving family. I had brothers and sisters and stuff. One sister and two brothers. And, we had a good upbringing, but it was very humble, not a lot of money. School was a big school that I went to in the area. And, it just didn't really have the systems in place that would support someone like me at school. I did very badly in school. I did really shit in school. From a really young age, I had that attention deficit. Mind would wander in class. Every single report I got was absolutely terrible. It's actually something it was quite funny because when I was up at my sister's last time, up in Scotland last year, she handed me this bag full of old stuff, and within that was my old school reports. And I looked through them. And as an adult, you can see things. I mean, first of all, you go, holy shit, it was that bad. The reports are very minuscule in detail. There was no detail. Like, my kids get reports these days in school. And when it comes back, it's like, it's full on. It's full of detail. And back then, it was like one side of A5 and a summary at the end within 2 lines, what you were like as a kid. Yeah. And every single one of mine was very similar by way of, I was distracted easily in class. I was basically a bit of a fucking mom in school, to be honest with you. Yeah, I was. And at the time, when I look back now, there just wasn't really the support for someone like a kid like me who just had other interests. I was always very practical. I had common sense. I was always wanting to be outside. I was always very practical minded. When it come to sitting in the classroom, I just wasn't really that gifted in that sense. And as a result of that, all my school reports were pretty crap. I had a really, really hard time in school, actually. And then towards the end of secondary school especially, I just went off the rails and I wasn't going to school. I left school when I was about 15. I sat no exams. I left school without even sitting my exams. So subsequently had no qualifications. But I did have a strong work ethic. So like, I always remembered all I wanted to do when I was at school was go out and get a job and earn money. That was always what I wanted to do. And I used to harp on to my mum and my dad. I'd be like, look, I just want to earn money. I don't need this. And they would say to me, look, you need your education. You need to have your options open for when you leave school. My mum didn't want me to join the army because I had 2 older brothers who were currently in the army. My old man had been in the army as well. So my mum had gone through the mill with that sort of stuff. And I was her last child. I was the baby. And the last thing she wanted was for me to join the army. But I think it was one of those things that being around that when you grow up, having the influence of 2 older brothers who I really respected and looked up to, as well as my dad, that strong military background, it's just almost like a natural progression for you. And as a result of that, the interest was always there to join the army. And eventually, after a couple of dead-end jobs in Fort William, I had to get out of that one-horse town because it's a lovely place to visit. But unless you go and work in a factory and get a decent job, or you go to uni and, you know, get a good career behind you. I didn't have that option, obviously, with zero education. So I just went down the natural progressive route, which was to join the army. Mm. And I joined the Royal Highland Fusiliers when I was 17, and obviously my military career obviously started from there.
Yeah. How did you find joining the Highland Fusiliers? What was your first thoughts joining up?
Well, I'll let you into another secret as well, and this is something that not a lot of people actually get any detail on. But I'm going to expose myself and not.
Go on, expose here, guys.
I'm going to tell you something now that is in some ways quite embarrassing, but hey, you can look back and my life wouldn't have been the same without it happening, and I think everything happens for a reason, obviously. So when I was 15, you used to get you used to be able to join the junior leaders when it was, you know, the regular army. You could join at 15 years and 8 months. And I wanted to do that. But when I was going to join the army as a junior leader, they had just stopped that as a thing. So the junior leaders actually had come to an end. And the minimum age was 17. So I was still 15 at the time. But you could join the Marines at 16. So I waited a few months. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something a little bit different. My brothers were in the army. My dad was in the army. His brothers were in the army. I'm going to try and join the Marines. So I applied for the Marines, and there was no careers office in Fort William. There was only the job centre. So they would send a recruitment person down to the job centre in Fort William, and you would meet them there, and they would do the aptitude test, the written test. And me, like a young nugget, I misread the memo. And I turned up at the interview wearing tracksuit and a t-shirt, thinking I was going to be asked to do pull-ups. The guy just looked at me like I was fucking stupid, you know. And he's like, no, he says, this is just a written test today. And I was like, holy shit, a written test. I could hardly write my own name. But I went for it anyway. And as a result of being, as I said before, poorly educated, no knowledge about things like maths or anything like that, you know, I sat this test, and the bit that I flunked on was the maths test. So I couldn't get into the Marines because I failed the fucking entry-level test in maths because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So that was obviously a bit of a bummer. I then had to wait a year before I could join the army. And when that time come, it was a case of my two brothers marched me up to the careers office in Inverness. And they said, look, my brother wants to join the army. This is what he wants to join. Don't give him any other options. He's joining the infantry. That's it. And that was it, mate. That's how my career started. You know, I just got marched up to the careers office by my two older brothers, and they were like, you know, get him signed up.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for all their faults, the Marines typically are a little bit more cerebral in their selection process. Yeah. Like you've actually got to have like a bit about you to pass that, because I've seen what their requirements are as a comparison to the infantry, well, the British Army. I don't know if it was the same when you joined up, the BARB, the British Army recruit battery test.
It was like I went from this rock solid maths test in the job centre, like sweating buckets, to then like obviously the next thing I know, I'm joining the army, and I've got the BARB test, and I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to guess where the dot lands on the screen from like it being lobbed from one end of the screen to the other. It was just embarrassingly easy, but yeah. I
can still remember one question to this day on my BARB, and it was like, if Peter is shorter than Simon, who is taller? That was the question. Yeah. And you were sat like, oh, fuck, I'm going to get it wrong.
Hey, it's what you make of it after that point, you know, so it's not always good.
Because I actually, when I took it and I came out, and you get that A4 printout, don't you, that basically tells you all the job roles that you're are open to based on your BARB score. I had a degree at that point where I was midway through getting it, and I said, I want to go airborne. And they're like, mate, you can do anything you want. I was like, I want to go airborne. They were like, fuck's sake, all right. and they pushed it through. But yeah, so when you got into the Highland Fusiliers, what was it like in terms of like shock or capture? How did you find basic?
Well, you know what, this is the main thing I took from this whole experience was I had such a shit time in school. You know, I was the kid in school that the teacher threatened to put the dunce's hat on and sit in the corner if I fucked up anymore, because I was that bad in school. And it was just purely down to lack of interest, and the teaching system at the time just wasn't there. You know, we didn't have teaching assistants in classes and stuff. You know, it was just like one teacher, 30 pupils, half of them misbehaving, and you know, it just, the support mechanism just wasn't there for me. So I almost got left She'll brushed aside and just let it get on with it and fuck up year after year. But then when I joined the army, because I was obviously very practical minded, I was very motivated anyway. I was into my fitness as well. So I got into my fitness when I was about 15. So I was very fit. I loved the gym. I loved doing practical work. So I had a job as an apprentice welder. I'd done factory jobs, and I was always very good at anything practically that I was shown to do. I had good aptitude for that sort of stuff. So when I come to joining the army, I took to it like a duck to water. You know, everything was like my fucking old man would be teaching me to iron my shirt when I was 8 years old. You know, I knew how to do all the things that were the practical essentials for joining the military. And when that time actually came, I actually found that for once in my life, I was in an environment where I was actually shining through as one of the stronger ones. And that seemed to be a thing that would continue throughout my whole career. I was always one of the stronger candidates in anything I did, whether it be basic training, career courses, selection. Obviously, selection's a higher level, so it's not, you know, it's not like you're going to stand out there so much. But at the same time, having that level at that time was obviously there to join the regiment, and that stemmed from a very, very strong build up to that from my military career in general. So when I joined basic training, I was fit. I was fairly, you know, switched on as far as military subjects were concerned. So yeah, for me, it was actually quite an easy transition. I enjoyed it. You know, I loved the army. I really, really did. I enjoyed my time in the army.
Yeah. And I think there's a key to differentiation there between, you said switched on from an army setting, because just because someone's book smart or intelligent doesn't necessarily mean they've got practical application of that. And common sense isn't common anymore. Like some of the most educated people I know are fuckwits, and vice versa. Yeah. Some people that are on books aren't that intelligent. When you give them a task or like psychometric testing, they excel, they shine.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Absolutely. You know, and that's what makes up teams. You know, this is one person. My work team, for example, I have the right people in the right jobs, because one person might be a bit of a geek and they're more inclined to doing stuff that requires sitting at a desk, whereas someone else might be a bit more outgoing, is good at sales or working on the gym floor. So it depends really what you're good at. But I always found that, you know, I was more of a practical person. I can learn, you know, now I'm a lot more academic now, because I've made myself, you know, I've put myself into that head first and actually learn things, because the desire to do so, because the outcome is there. The need to do it is a lot more than when I was at school, for example.
Yeah.
You know the score with that.
Yeah. It's so much more relevant when you're engaged by it and you want to excel in something because you've chosen to. Like, it's very
Absolutely,
different thing.
Yeah.
Cool. So what was the thought process? You know, so you obviously spent a few years at battalion with the Highland Fusiliers. What was the thought process behind putting yourself forward to go on selection?
Well, you know what, mate? It was something that I was always interested in. I was that kid, you know, when I was. I remember when I've got vague memories when the Iranian embassy siege happened. You know, I was a small child then, but just a couple of years after that, you had that film Who Dares Wins. You know, the Lewis Collins movie, the old classic, old Skellen, right? And I always remember getting the Eagle Eyes Action Man with the black kit on, like the team kit, and I've been obsessed with this fucking movie. So I'd watched this movie. So from a very young age, I was always obsessed about the SAS and the military in general. So when it came to joining the army, I guess it was something that, although I was only a young teenager joining the military, I always had that desire to go to better myself and everything in my job. So I was never one of those guys who was just happy to settle where I was. It was always about, what can I do next? And I would always pick role models. That's one thing I always did as well. Whatever I was doing, I would always choose role models to look up to, and I would identify these people and try and emulate them in some way. And I would look up to people and go, you know what? One day I can be as good as him. So, because you know, it's like when you join the military, you've got the instructor that's a fucking wanker. You've got the one who you look up to, who's a bit more fair, who's really good at his very good people skills, and you know, they tend to be more of a role model that you would want to be like. And I would always have people around me that I would always want to strive towards. And when it comes to the SAS, I always remember actually the first week in basic training. You probably experienced this yourself, where they sit you down and they give you a lesson on all the other elements of the forces, of the combined services. So they'll say, you know, this cap badge is the Med Corps, this cap badge is the REMI, and they go through all the different elements of the all the
You
combined
don't
service.
get it so much at Power Depot because like if it ain't maroon, it don't matter. It's
Well,
all-
yeah,
it's all-
it's
it's all-
If it's not fucking maroon, it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got this lesson, and actually a good friend of mine, a guy called Ewan Ross, who was my platoon commander back then, and he was RHF as well. And I always remember the last cap badge that they put up in this PowerPoint. It wasn't a fucking hell PowerPoint. It was slides. It was like projector back then, you know.
Yeah.
Back in the old days, and he put this slide up, and the last slide he put up was the SAS cap badge.
Mm.
So the winged dagger's on the screen, and I'm pretty sure that most people in the room didn't even know what it was. But obviously something that I was really familiar with. I was fucking obsessed with this at my young age. So he says, anyone know what this is? And I put my hand up and says, it's the SAS. And he says, right, is there anyone in this room who would ever aspire to join this regiment? And he says, this regiment is simply the best regiment in the world. Not just the British Army, not just combined services, but the world. Is anyone in this room got the thought in the back of their mind that one day they could join this? And me and my one good mate that I joined up with, a guy called Dougie Hepburn, he's a great guy, and both of us were really keen as mustard. And we both put our hands up, and out of about 40 guys in this intake, it was only me and him that put our hands up. And no one else did. And 5 years later I actually joined it. He actually got out the army in the end, so he went a different direction altogether, but that was another story. But the bottom line is, it was very early on, right in the embryonic stages of my career, it was a thing that I always aspired to be like. And the other thing as well, what was that was a really heavy influence in that, was the fact that my oldest brother at the time was actually preparing to go on selection.
Yeah.
So he was a full screw at the depot. Again, he was my my oldest brother. He was my idol growing up, and then he was going for the SAS, and he was in training at the time for it. And because that was obviously something I knew he was doing, it was something that I automatically thought, yeah, maybe one day I can do it as well.
Yeah. I think there's so much to unpack from that. And what I specifically like you spoke about was having that someone you identify as a role model, and then surrounding yourself with that person, because that rings true even in civilian life. You and I have obviously got a mentor that we aspire to be like in business, and we can essentially habit jack. We can take traits and elements of their personality and emulate that in order to build and develop ourselves. And without that, we wouldn't, well, I know from speaking for myself, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I could be in terms of my business operations and stuff like that. And then again, with coaching, I've always surrounded myself with coaches who have done things that I want to achieve, and people who have been there. And like you said, there's a light of fire on your ass. You're like, well, if they can fucking do it, if I spend enough time around them, it's infectious.
Absolutely, mate. And I think that's really, really important to understand, because if you submerge yourself in something, you have to catch it. You have. It's a bit like when you join the army, and anyone joins the army, after 12 months of being in the army, they go home and their civvy mates are going, no, you're talking differently, or you're saying certain words that are different, because you become part of that culture. So you talk the same, you walk the same, you dress the same. Everyone can tell you you're a soldier. You've always got that look about you, no matter how long you end up.
Hard to try and get rid of it.
You can't get rid, but it's not a bad thing, because it's just the way you hold yourself. It's the confidence. It's the mannerisms. Like I say, it's the language. And that's because you're around people who are similar. It's like that old rule, you become an average of the 5 people you spend most time around. And at the end of the day, mate, there's not that much in life that's completely original. So when it comes to emulating people that you aspire to be like, I don't ever see the problem with that. And it's something I think that it's not like you're plagiarizing people. It's not like you're being a direct carbon copy. It's not like you're trying to be them. You're trying to be the best version of yourself, but get ideas from these people. And if that's someone who is like, let's say like our coach, Phil Graham. Phil's a really super confident guy. The way he talks, he exudes this sense of certainty and confidence. And if you can listen to that enough, you will end up picking up and end up talking with the same confidence yourself.
100%.
If you listen to a public speaker on video, if it's like fucking watching Tony Robbins on YouTube, you have to pick up that confidence, and it does flow through you.
100%. I mean, I remember in my early days of working with Phil, I listened to the way he spoke, the words that he used, like the tone, the rhythm of his voice. Yeah. And, when I was doing tasks in business early doors that I was, to be honest, fucking shiting myself, I just think, right, what would Phil do? And then emulate that. And then it just becomes an element of you, and you grow. And it was the same as you identified, when you've spent a bit of time, even in early doors in a military career, when you've spent time around people who speak in a certain way, use certain terminology and language, and you go home and see your civvy mates, and they all think you're a bit odd because you don't communicate properly anymore, and you want to drink piss and do all sorts of stuff like that. And they're like, mate, you're weird, but you're just a product of your environment at that point.
That's a Paris thing. I'm not fucking your man's up to that one, mate. That's a Paris thing.
You're just a product of your environment at that point in time.
Of course you are.
And it's definitely not a bad thing as long as you've got a good environment and you've selected the right environment for you.
And that's how it works, mate. And that's how, that's how companies operate. That's how military forces operate, because you have to become part of the bigger machine for the mission that's bigger than you. It's as simple as that. You have to have people that are carbon copies in some way of each other. They have to be similar in order to operate the same and think the same.
Yeah, and obviously we both now emulate that in our coaching ethos, in our community that we have with our clients. It's like,
Absolutely.
There's going to be some people that it doesn't work for, in terms of like they might not be attracted to it. That's absolutely fine, because there'll be an environment and network that's right for them. But people who listen to what we speak about and want to achieve things that are similar to yourself and that I've achieved, this is the environment that you can submerge yourself in, and you will elevate as a result of being in contact and a network of people who have done these things and can sort of show you the ropes, so to speak.
Yeah, that's absolutely. You need to have it. I think the importance of a peer group. I said this on the last mastermind session that we had when it was boardroom. It was back in lockdown. I think we had it, and I went on about that. I actually said something at the end of the day, which was about the importance of a peer group, because it's very when you've got your own business, or you're on your own with this type of, when you're in this world alone as far as what you want to achieve, you're surrounded by people who are not really as driven as you or share the same goals or values as you. And if you're just around those people, it's a lonely place to be if you're trying to become a different shaped person, if you know what I mean, mentally and the way you think. And if you don't submerge yourself or surround yourself with people who are similar, then it's a fucking lonely place to be, actually. It's a bit like being a business owner.
Spend so much time in your fucking own head.
Yeah, you really, really do. And you'll pick up on the negatives. I'm not saying everyone around you otherwise is negative, but when you don't have that culture, that belief system, and the people that are on the same page, it's very, very difficult to stay on that track on your own without that. So that's you
end up suppressing yourself in order to fit in, until you find that network and that community that you click with, and it all sort of drops into place, and you realize, right, this is where I was supposed to be, and then you elevate to the level of the group.
Of course you do, and exactly, they won't come down to you. You've got to elevate to them, otherwise, you won't have a place. Yeah.
So, gonna move us on to probably what might be the most obvious question, but so you put yourself forward for selection. Now, for those who potentially aren't familiar with it, what is selection? What does selection mean to you?
It's not a TV program on Channel 4.
yeah.
Any of the guys on that will say exactly the same. So it's not me bashing. I'm just saying there are people, and I'm not saying that to bash the fucking program before anyone thinks that. That's TV. The real thing is very, very different, because one thing you don't have to compare. I mean, at the end of the day, it's best to compare this with the TV show, because people are familiar with that. Most of this audience that are listening to this will be familiar with a TV show that's run at the moment, which is about the SAS. But that's very much for the TV, to make good TV for people who have never had any sort of military experience before, to push them to levels that they otherwise wouldn't go to, right? And that's fair enough. I'm completely cool with that. But when it comes to the real thing, I was actually on a chat with Chris Gethin. You know Chris?
Yeah. From
so
Case Russell.
Yeah, so Chris is a good friend of mine, and we speak quite regularly. And Chris was saying, he says, I've just been reading this book, and I've been watching this TV show, and I've been catching it on Amazon Prime or whatever it was. He says, and fucking hell, he says, I can't believe you had to go through that. And I was like, look, just get this right, Chris. There's no fucking similarity at all.
What's the TV show? Is it 10 days? 10 days long? Something like that? 10, 12 days?
Yeah, it's about something like that. A week to 10 days. I don't fucking know. Yeah. It's a week to 10 days. And don't get me wrong, they get fucking beasted. Yeah, these people get thrashed. And especially for someone who's not had that introduction period of being in the army exactly. When you join the regiment, you've either been in the paras, been in the infantry, or been in some other regiment where you've undergone military experience to a point.
You know what to expect to a certain degree.
It's like
how you're going to be spoken to.
It's a sideways and slightly upward step, and then it's progressive. to that level, obviously, and if you can meet the level, then you keep going. But it's nothing like what you experience by watching a TV show. So the main difference is that obviously it's just a physical test. There's no soldiering. So it's the soldiering element that makes selection really, really fucking tough, because it's a simulation of new skills, the pressure they put on you. It's a 6-month course, so selection itself. I remember when I joined the regiment over 20 years ago. It's gone back some now. And at the time, they'd started this pre-selection process, because back in the day, this is back in, fucking 80s, 90s, and any time before, there wasn't really a filter process for the regiment. Anyone could apply to go on SAS selection. And there was the odd sad bastard who would go, yeah, I'm going to apply for SAS selection. I know for a fact I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing, and I've got no chance. But if I can say in my CV that I went for SAS selection, it's going to look cool as fuck, right? So you did get those tire-kicking people that would just do it to say that they had gone for selection. That was the sad reality of that. So what the regiment did was they implemented this selection process, like a pre-selection process, which was about 3 days long, I think it was. And that was fucking cheeky. That was a hard test, because it was just a classroom for all your sort of your basic military knowledge test. You'd have to pass that. You'd be navigation exercises. There would be like a map reading test, and then there was a series of fitness tests, which were really, really difficult because they were all back to back. It wasn't like you did one day and one the next. It was like they were literally all back to back, and that did weed out a lot of the ones that would have no chance whatsoever. And then obviously they could then say, right, okay, this is your fitness level. This is what you've done on the tests. And it's hard, it's a hard course, as short as it is. And then you would be given the green light for being invited on selection. So when I did that course, I had plans to go on the July course, which is a summer course, and this was in November. So I went on the pre-selection in November and did this 3-day course. And I was actually out on ops in Kosovo at the time with the RHF. So we were in Kosovo doing a peacekeeping tour out there, and I got sent on this pre-selection course. And at the end of the course, I did pretty well in the course, passed all the fitness tests with quite a good level, and passed all the other tests. And they says, look, okay, we'll see you in January. I was like, oh, whoa. I was like, I don't plan to go in January. I didn't know what to say. I thought, shit, they're going to think I'm a pussy if I don't want to go in January. But then, what do I say here? So I says, well, I did plan on going in July. And they were like, nah, bullshit, you'll be fit enough. And I always remember the guy who was giving me the debrief on the course. He said 2 things. He says, for the next several weeks, don't overtrain. He says, get a pack in your back, not that much weight, go up the hills, get your legs moving. Don't overtrain for this. Don't spend all your time in the gym. You don't walk to war in your hands. And he said, and the last thing he says, for the week before it, he said, right, and I quote this, he says, for the week before you go in selection, go on the piss. Get on the piss, get it all out your system. He says, enjoy yourself, have a piss up, do what you got to do, and then come in the course ready to start. But don't worry about it. He says, you'll be fine. And that's what I did. That's exactly what I did. And when I went on selection, obviously it's a 6-month course, so the 6 month is split into modules. So when you go up the hills, it's only the first 4 weeks. So people think that the hills, the selection part is the hills, walking around the brick and beacons and whatnot. But that's only the first 4 weeks. That's only pretty much to see if you've got the aptitude to do the rest of the course. So the rest of the course is 5 months after that. And there's a lot of different elements to it. Obviously, you get jungle training and a host of other things. And that's when it gets really tough, And as far as numbers go, I think going back, I think there was probably about between 250 and 300 people, I think, started selection.
Oh, yeah.
And I think at the end of it, there was like 18. And that was including like the guys that were going down the pool.
That's sub 10%, it's about 7.5%.
Yeah, it's a small percentage. Yeah. But what you got to realise is that, and this is to sort of be more, to shed a bit of humble light in this, is that it's not a case of like, those people are just like so much better than everyone else. There's a lot of people get inside their own fucking heads, and they tell themselves that they're not good enough, or it gets tough and they just jack.
Mm.
You know, so a high percentage of people who don't make it through are actually people who just fucking throw the towel in.
Mm.
Actually, this is the reality of it. The failure rate, the actual failure rate is not that high. Believe it or not, it's not that loads of people fail for being shit soldiers. It's the fact that most people peel off because they either get injured, they give up, they tell themselves that they're not good enough, or they might fail. But I mean, you know, you can cut that the whole number at the beginning. You can chop it into like 5 by the time the hills finishes. And after the first month, it's like a fifth of people left.
And I think that's true. Obviously, outside of the selection's probably the perfect crucible for it. But in everyday life, and things that people do on a daily with regards to their physique and bettering themselves, is to compare themselves to other people. And if they see someone else struggling, straight away they shit can it because they're like, that's too hard. If you can't do it, I can't do it.
Absolutely. And in some ways, you know, go back to the selection thing. I remember being at the first briefing, and the training officer was like, you know, he said, there are X amount of people in this room, though, 250 people, whatever it was. He said, by the end of this course, I will fit you all in the 1 4-tonner. And for those of you who don't know what a 4-tonner is, it's a military vehicle that holds 18 people, or maybe a bit more than that. But I think, I don't know, maybe you know, Mark, but I can't remember. It's round about.
There's less now because they have these fucking safety seats in them. Like they look like fucking racing seats. Yeah, you get 2 in now because of social distancing, mate.
Yeah. So like, so that's the thing. And the thing is, at that moment when someone says that, it's a daunting thought. So you look around. I mean, you sit in the cookhouse at Sennybridge Camp, and it's like you're looking around. And I was there as a young Lance Corporal at the time, and I'm looking around at these senior officers and colour sergeants and sergeant majors from various other battalions, loads of para-res people, loads of other fucking walks of life from all over the place. And straight away, I'm thinking, holy shit, you know, that way you compare yourself against others, and you psychologically start sort of putting yourself down a little bit. But then at the end of the day, I thought, well, my thought on that was, okay, well, there's 18 of us, or whatever it is, enough to fit inside a 4-tonner. Why can't one of them be me? And if I don't fucking just put my head down and my arse up and go for it, I'm never going to find out. So it's a case of you just got to fucking go for it, you know?
Which is a really powerful statement. I think if anyone takes anything, just one soundbite away from this conversation we've had, that one sentence, if anyone can do it, why shouldn't it be me?
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck can't it be me?
Has to be somebody.
Because if everyone's going to defeat himself and say, well, I'm not going to bloke who's going to do it because he's fitter and stronger than me, then no one's going to fucking do it. Like, absolutely. Someone's got to have that belief in himself and just think, well, fuck it. If I give it everything I've got and I'm not good enough, fail, and I can take that on the chin.
And the thing is, you can never, ever do better than your best. If you can give yourself that, if you can do that, if you can pass that mirror test, you know, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and go, you know what? If you didn't quite get there, if you didn't pass or you didn't succeed in something that you really, really wanted to do, because let's face it, not everything's possible, right? But it's always possible to do your absolute best. And if you can look at yourself in the mirror and authentically say to yourself, you know what, I did try my absolute, I fucking left nothing to chance. There was no stone unturned. I did my absolute best. No one, including yourself, can ever take that away from you.
Yeah.
You're just not good enough. That's just the way it is.
I like that because there's a lot of people that circulate the fucking, to be honest, bullshit that, you know, anything is possible. You can achieve anything you put your mind to. Well, like you said, you can do your absolute best, and not a lot of people know what that actually looks like. Not a lot of people have genuinely like emptied the tanks, but it doesn't mean that I can go and outrun Usain Bolt. Even if I believe I can, I can't. It ain't gonna happen. But exactly. I can give it absolutely everything I've got, and as a result, I'll be the best sprinter I could ever possibly be, and that's good enough. Yeah. That's good enough for me.
It's like that. One quote, I love that quote by Vince Lombardi. You know, perfection is unattainable, but if you chase perfection, we can catch excellence. I think that's all we should ever do, because perfection is unattainable. Perfection is subjective.
And it's a really powerful question people use on a daily basis, even to reflect. Have I given everything I've got today? Or have I shit canned half of stuff because I can't be bothered?
Yeah.
And if you can go to bed, like, so at the end of every day, I say, okay, have I done something that serves my clients to the very best of my ability? And if I'm saying to myself, oh, I could have done this, that, and the other, then I'll fire up my laptop again and I'll get it done. But whatever your walk of life, whether it's business, whether it's your gym, whether it's your physique, whatever it is, if you can say, have I done my best today? Or did I half-ass it? Then you've only got one person to blame at the end of the day.
And the thing is, Mark, if you don't ask yourself that question, it will be left untouched. And this is when problems start to happen and cracks start to appear, because if we don't evaluate ourselves, if there's no evaluation process in life or anything for that matter, how can you ever have a marker to improve from. So if you can ask yourself that every night before you go to bed and genuinely say, how did I do in this today? You know, what score would I give myself out of 10, or however you do it? Did I try my best? If you're making yourself accountable and actually you have a system in place where you're having to sit down as a habit, you know, we're all about, I know you and I are all about the same kind of habits and stuff like that, like when it comes to personal development, mindset and all that. You know, we'll have systems that we follow, but we are kind of fucking weird as far as the average person goes. Not that many people do that, let's face it.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
But that's what I want to extrapolate from a lesson from yourself, and obviously, you know, that I do as well, without plugging myself, that people can take value from this. And that's what we aim to give people in our coaching teams, is when you step forward into the breach, and exactly as you did, you know, thinking of in those days 20 years ago about joining selection, thinking, fuck it, I'll have a crack at that. I can do better. I'm going to seek that challenge out. If you do that, you'll be rewarded with like infinite self-development by just surrounding yourself with people who are on a mission to be better at everything.
And you know what, as well, is the other thing as well that I'm going to mention as well that I think is really important. And if you look at the situation of the Roger Bannister thing, Roger Bannister was the first person to run a sub 4 minute mile ever recorded, and then 1 year later there was like 10. Because
people just kept breaking it.
Now,
a phrase I really like.
And when sorry, mate, go on.
No, sorry, carry on. If there's a bit of delay, then carry on, dude.
When I joined, I mean, in para-reg, for example, so in the parachute regiment, this is the thing to take away as well. In the parachute regiment, right, it's very much a natural progression for a lot of people because it's the norm. So every single selection process, there's loads of parachute regiment guys turn up. And out of those that turn up, there's always a few get in because they send a load. And then out of that, a lot will maybe fail or peel off. But there'll be a handful of people that will pass. Hence why there's a high percentage of parachute regiment guys that join the regiment, because it's a natural progression for them. It's kind of within their culture. It's kind of normal to do that, you know. Whereas the background I came from, everyone just psyched themselves out of it because it hadn't been done. It hadn't been done since there was one guy who did it in like the 70s. An officer that was actually my commanding officer at the time when I joined the RHF. And since him, there was no other ranks that had actually passed selection. There had been a few people go for it, but the thing is, what happened with that was there was a few, what we used to call them SAS SIDs. You know, there's always got a SAS SID in an infantry battalion. There's always a SAS SID. And the SAS SID is a guy who's always squared away. He's always keen as mustard. He's always talking about selection. He's that extra keen guy. You know, he's a SAS SID. He's perceived as being this guy who's a super soldier within his little fraternity. And then if he goes and he doesn't get in, we're all fucked.
Fucking no chance, yeah.
We get no chance because he's fucking switched on. Yeah. He's a pamphlet head. He's fit. All this sort of business, right? And you get those guys. You get the SAS SIDs on selection, and there's loads of them fail because it's not really what people expect it to be every single time. So when I went for selection, you know, I wasn't a SAS SID. I was a decent soldier, a decent operator, but I wasn't your typical SAS SID. And when I went on and passed selection, the one bit of advice that my brother actually gave me, which is the best advice I got, and he said, look, don't think about this as being something that's so fucking out there. He says, don't think of it as the SAS selection. Think of this as you're going on a course. You're going on a course that you have to fucking suck it up and get on with it until you see it through and do your best. That's it. Don't overthink it. And that's what I did, and I got through. But after that mold had been broken, the next year there was 2 passed out of 4 who went for it. Now I went by myself. From
your regiment, yeah.
Yeah, so I went by myself. It was only me, and I got there and I got in. But then the next year there was 4, I think maybe 4 or 5 lads went for selection, and 2 passed.
Yeah.
So a bit like the Roger Bannister thing. People just need that belief.
Just opens a floodgate, and prove it's possible. A phrase I really like is that the early bird catches the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. So if someone's gone ahead of you and you can basically learn from their lessons and be inspired by what they've tried to do and just tag on the back of them, emulate that. Exactly what we spoke about earlier. Emulate someone who's been successful at what you want to be successful at.
Yeah.
Whether it's in fucking a military career, whether it's in your physique, whether it's in business, someone before has gone and done it. Yeah. Someone's been at Roger Bannister. Learn from what they've done and allow them to connect the dots for you.
Absolutely, mate. And, you know, just to go on from that as well, you were saying about what did you say? What was that saying you just said a minute ago? The bird catches the
early
worm.
bird catches the worm. The second mouse gets the cheese.
Yeah, there was another one I was thinking of. I can't remember the fucking saying now. But it's
Millions of one-liners, mate. Yeah.
I'll come back to it. Yeah.
What just out of interest more than anything, what did you find the hardest element of selection to be? I mean, a lot of people speak about escape and evasion and stuff like that, but what did you find the hardest element to be?
I actually thought, and this is different for everybody, but I actually thought the hardest part of selection was the hills. And so many people I've spoken to in the past, obviously people that have been in the regiment, mates of mine and whatnot, I actually struggled with the hills because I had a couple of really bad experiences on the hills that made it extra hard for me. I was always a short arse, you know.
Likewise.
Yeah, so we're short arses, mate, and our legs have to move faster.
Mate, I had to double on most tabs because my fucking legs.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to get those steps in, but I mean, I was always like, I could always shift pretty fast. But I had a really bad experience, which actually ended up being a blessing in disguise. I'll be honest with you. At the end of the first week, you do the infamous fan dance. Now, the fan dance is something that has been taken on me. I think you can actually do that as a civvy as well. Like, you can go and do like the SF experience, I think it's called. And you can go do the fan dance. And the fan dance is pretty much a 24k speed march based on 6 k's an hour. You get 4 hours to pass. The DS lead it, and you've got to try and stick with the DS and get over the line as quick as you can. So you start at the Story Arms in the Brecon Beacons. You go up to the Penny Fan, all the way down to the turnaround point and back again. Mate, it's 24 k's. It's fucking hard. It's probably one of the hardest things you do on selection, purely because of the weight you carry and the speed that you have to march at. So it's a cheeky little test. It's the end of week 1, so you lose a lot of people on that day. There's a lot of people peel off in that because it's a hard old game. But during that march, I actually sustained a really bad injury. I fell over about halfway around and I smashed my face off a rock and split my head open, split my eye from the top of my eyebrow all the way around to under my eye socket. I had a massive big gash in my eye. And it was one of those situations, the field dressing came out. DS was like, "You all right? You want to carry on?" I was like, yeah. Got my field dressing out, held it on my eye. And I ended up finishing inside the time. But fuck me, it took every single ounce of my fibre to get over that line because I was delirious. I hadn't had any food. I had to stop at the halfway point and get my eye fixed up, which then lost me time to eat any food or to have a drink. So I had to just basically crack on. And to be honest with you, what that did for me was give me a lot of credibility. There was this little fucking jock who was 22 years old, youngest guy in selection, bar 1, I think it was. And it was witnessed by a lot of people. I fell over, arse over tit, and I fucking smashed my head really, really badly. And I cracked on. And they said a lot of people would have used that as an excuse to just go, I'm gonna jack, I'm gonna peel off it. And I kept going, mate. And after that, they would always, because my eye for the next 3 weeks after that was just like a fucking like Rocky Balboa. And I got a lot of good comments, like the DS were like, "Fucking hell, fair play to you mate. You kept going," and a lot of people would have peeled off at that stage. But I think it actually gave me quite a lot of credibility in their eyes, moving on to the course. So that was a fucking hard old day. That was on the fan dance. Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest things. So the hills for me was probably the hardest part. And the other thing with that I mentioned to you earlier, Mark, before we got started here, was I always suffered really badly from Achilles tendonitis. So I carried injuries around that whole time. And that just made it double fucking hard for me, But,
being on the hills is, like, on any hill, even people that do a bit of, like hobby walking will notice going up and down hill in not the most supportive footwear. And you probably in the old combat assault highs back then, I'm guessing, just fucking punish your tendons.
Oh, mate, we had... it was slightly after putties. It wasn't quite putties days,
yeah.
But it was
during the war.
Yeah, it was combat high. Yeah, I wore combat high.
Yeah,
it was no Gucci kit, mate. It was just basic stuff,
Yeah, I think I was one of the first people from Paradepot to go to the Altberg factory and get some Altberg because my feet were constantly in shit state from the combat highs. Because for people who listen, don't know what they are. It's just the old stereotypical black leather boot that's just got like a solid flat inside that is not in any way made to support that kind of activity. To be honest, I think they're about fucking £5 a pair to produce.
Yeah,
just like they're just a bag of shite, to be honest.
Yeah,
but they're idiot proof. Like you struggle to break them. you'd struggle to fuck them up. So they're fit for purpose. But yeah, they just punish your feet, your knees, your lower back, everything, absolutely everything.
Yeah, and I think it was a good benefit being young back then as well, mate. Because I go up the hills now, and I feel it a lot more with hardly any weight on my back. You know, my knees and my hips and everything feel it so much more these days. And I always think back and reflect on that and think, how the hell did I manage to do that shit? You know?
Yeah.
So,
hard. What 3 lessons would you say that still serve you today, whether that be in your business, in your everyday sort of, we've spoken about self-reflection and having a growth mentality, your home life. What 3 lessons would you say that you draw on more than any that you still utilize, that you think other people could probably draw from?
I'd say one of them, a couple of them actually, that one I've mentioned, I think, but one that I always tend to talk about, especially with clients as well, and my team in business, is that the power of visualization. I was doing visualization before I even knew what it was, and I've studied. I've done my NLP course and all that sort of stuff as well, which you go deep into visualization techniques. And when I learned about visualization and the science behind it, I always remember thinking, shit, I was actually doing that when I was a young soldier. I was doing it when I was a bodybuilder. I just didn't really understand exactly. I maybe thought at the time that it was just a normal thing that everyone did. And it is sometimes. But the power of visualization is so strong. And I think it's about putting yourself there before it's even been achieved. It's a bit of a cliche. You hear a lot of like top athletes and fucking high performers say the same stuff, but it's true. If you can visualize yourself on a daily basis being somewhere or being in the situation that you want to be in, that you're not there yet, the likelihood of it happening is far greater than if you don't. So visualization is a really big one. I use that to great effect, especially when I was on selection, for example. In my mind, when I was a recruit on selection, I was already in the regiment. In my mind, I was always like, when you're a kid, you pretend you're a fucking football player or whatever you're doing at the time. Whatever you do when you're a kid. Because the thing is as well, when you're a child, everything's possible. And as you get older,
it's a really interesting topic that. Like, at what point in our life do we stop thinking like that? Because kids are incredible. Even their approach to food and their visualization, it's so real, it's so vivid.
Let me just explain this to you, right? When I went to a Tony Robbins event a few years ago. It was called Date with Destiny. It was an event in Florida. It was a fucking phenomenal experience. And there's several exercises you do within that event that are visualization techniques and experiences. And they're deep dives into your past and all that sort of stuff. And it's really interesting. And one of them that you do is, and it's fascinating, honestly, mate. Right? And the setting has to be right, the environment has to be right. But I found it fascinating, and it rings so true to everybody. And that is when you're a child. So you go through this. There's a meditation visualization exercise that he takes you through, and he says, "I want you to imagine when you were 5 years old. Think back to when you were 5 years old. Think of who was around you, what they looked like, what they were saying, where you were, what the environment was like, what the house was like, or wherever you lived, and picture the scene as best you possibly can. Really, really dig deep into your past and picture yourself when you were 5 years old. When you're 5 years old, what did you like doing? What did you want to be when you grew up? Ideally thinking back, what was your aspirations then? What did you want to be? And you think back and you go, well, when you were a kid, you probably thought that it was possible to be Superman or Batman or fucking something that is so far-fetched, but in your mind as a child, it's completely true. And then when you do this visualization exercise, it's about imagining yourself on a beach or something like that, and you see your 5-year-old self. You see your 5-year-old self in the distance, and you imagine yourself running towards your 5-year-old self, and you see this kid who is you running towards you. And when the kid gets there, who is you, you embrace yourself and basically pick them up and just basically embody that person. You embody that 5-year-old again. And then they go through it again with the 12-year-old. When you were 12, what did you want to be? And then they do it again with the 20-year-old. And then they do the up-to-date version. And the pattern is basically that when you're 5, anything's possible. If you want to fly to fucking space, you want to be an astronaut, you want to be a superhero, in your mind at the time, it's possible. When you're 10 or 12, it's possible to be a professional sports star, like a football player, or whatever your chosen sport is at that time. You believe in your mind that you can do that. But you might not believe it's possible to be a superhero anymore. And when you're 16, that changes to then something slightly less again.
Yeah, something
And
a bit
then
more shit. Like you could be
by
a
the time
fucking dentist or something. Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
time you're in your 20s, you just want fucking money and you want a decent job and you know
Yeah. Just settled.
you want money to go in the piss or buy a new car. But the lesson there is that your belief diminishes as you get older. Obviously, you become more mature and you become more realistic. You have to. But at the same time, if it's what holds a lot of people back. It holds a lot of people back because they just start believing that things aren't possible.
Exactly, as we spoke about earlier, being a product of your environment, you see other people accepting their reality and you chalk it up as, well, that must be the crack then. That must be what we all do, is we just fucking recant our dreams and
that becomes the norm. You know, and it's like the influencing factors around you. If no one else is doing it, then obviously you get stuck in that.
It's that Roger Bannister mentality. But what I'm happy about more than anything is, to be honest, like when we're sat here, I mean, I've had this comment a few times with my appearance and my background and the way I talk, is that people are always a little bit taken back when I start talking about things like gratitude, reflection, journaling. They think, oh, that's something that like fucking the vegan chicks do. And then obviously we've got like an former SS operator, a competitive bodybuilder sat here saying again, like the power of the mind, visualization and reflecting back on how you felt as a child at certain points in your life. Like the mind cannot be overlooked. If you're someone who still holds on to the mentality that, oh, journaling's fucking, that's for wetties, I don't do that. I don't reflect.
The thing is with that, right? This is what I think personally, right? And a lot of people share this thought. People who think that, right? And it's not their fault because again, it's about who they're around, their belief systems and all the rest of it. But there's nothing wrong with tapping into something that could potentially make you better. So yeah, there are things that I've done in the past. There are things that I've done in recent years, courses and seminars and all that, whether it be Tony Robbins or Richard Bandler doing NLP and any other course. There's always some shit that I'll never use. There's always something I look at and go, I'll never use that. I just don't like it. Or I try it, but then I go, you know what? I'm just not feeling it. That's fine. But you try it. You at least
you've exposed yourself to
it as an option, and then you make your mind up after you've sampled that. But then there are other things you'll go, fuck me, that's a real eye opening. It's a penny drop moment for me. That I never ever considered the power in that, whether it be gratitude or, you know, if you said to a friend of yours, you know, go and write down 4 things you're grateful for every single night before you go to bed, or when you wake up in the morning, do it for the next 2 weeks. I guarantee every single person that genuinely does that and they stick to it, they'll feel better after. Right?
100%.
Until they embrace that and go with it with an open mind, they'll never know. So what happens is that the ego gets in the way, because what happens is, as human beings, we obviously have this natural defense mechanism, which is to avoid danger, avoid
challenge, avoid
challenges, or, you know, change is scary because a lot of people aren't ready for change, and a lot of people don't want to change until something gets so fucking uncomfortable that then they make that transition. But that's until that always often has to get to a point where it's so bad that it's, you know, they've let it slip so bad that they're now in desperation as a result of that. But the dreaded ego, I always remember hearing someone say, I forget who it was now, but they said it's really, really important to make your enemy, fucking hell, it's really important to make your ego your friend and not your foe. And we all need an ego, especially as men. Men have bigger egos than women naturally. And we need an ego for certain reasons. But if you can make your ego your friend and not your foe, then you'll go on far better in life. And the reason that people either don't try something, don't embrace a new idea, whether it be gratitude or something else, it's through a mindset, if it's meditation, whatever it could be, it's because they're thinking about what other people are going to think of them.
Yeah, the ego is like, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want other people to think I'm weak.
Yeah.
Like, and what you really want is an ego that's accepting and be like, right, okay, I accept that other people might have an opinion about this, but I'm not too fussed about what that opinion might be, because this is going to better me. Yeah. And then when the people start doing that, they stop standing in their own fucking way. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what's wrong with a lot of people. They stand in their own way because they're just worried about what other people think. And I always say that the moment you've got to be mindful of other people in certain things in life, but at the same time, the moment you stop giving a fuck about what everyone thinks, you'll probably start living your life a bit better.
Yeah, 100%.
Try things that could actually improve you. So when it comes to things like mindset,
I took a leap going back a few months ago now. Obviously, you're aware of Carly Ryan, who is an incredible sort of mindset and holistic NLP coach.
Yeah,
but she works, to be honest, her target demographic is females, you know. But she gave a speech in a Massive Action Day with Phil, and I was so fucking inspired by it. I was like, I don't give a flying fuck what anyone thinks, and I signed up for a mentorship. Yeah, and like you said, there was a lot of it that you almost disregard. But to disregard it before you've even immersed yourself is just ignorance, in my opinion. You're just casting it away before you've even tried it. There's probably 10% of what I extrapolated from that. But what I did extrapolate was so powerful that it's changed my life and the lives of people around me, because I dared to put myself on a limb and go out and invest in it and see what it was all about. And it's been a never-ending journey ever since. And I don't think I'll come to the end of that journey, if ever. But it all comes with just accepting it.
And, and she's got a very, Kelly's got a very, very good way of explaining things as well that makes it really, really easy to take in. And it's relevant for anyone, whether it be male or female, whatever your perceived gender is. There's a lot to be taken from that sort of stuff, because the mind is the mind. And there's a lot to be learned from someone like that who knows a lot about the science behind the human mind. And the thing is, I remember back in 2004, I think it was, I did my Spanish course, and as part of the course, you go to a place called Salamanca in Spain, and you go to a university there for a whole week. It's at the end of like a 8-week course, and the last week is done in Spain in a Spanish university. It's a really good experience. You stay with a Spanish family, you go and you sample the culture, you go in the piss, obviously. And I remember one night the Spanish teacher was this Northern Irish girl who had a hard job, because she had a group of big burly men who were all regiment guys, and she's having to fucking host them in this foreign country and look after us like big kids, and we just wanted to go to the piss. And she's like, come on guys, you need to take this serious, you need to study and all this. But we went out this one night, and she'd organised this salsa dance. This is to reference the ego thing, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, I've booked this salsa dance classes at this pub, this local pub that had this couple come in, and they ran this salsa night once a week. And you want to see the faces in these guys. They were like, I'm not fucking, dude, fucking salsa, that's fucking for women and all this sort of shit. That's Ponzi and all this. And I could see the pain in her face, because she'd organised this event, and she was obviously counting on us to capitulate and go with it. And no one wanted to know me, and everyone's like, I'll stand at the bar, I'll fucking watch. And I thought, for fuck's sake. So I says, look, I'll do it. I don't mind. I don't give a shit. And it was me and this one other lad. We both of us did it. There's about 10 of us, 8 to 10 of us in this course. And there was 2 of us that thought, we'll give it a bash. And I tell you what, mate, it was one of the fucking most enjoyable things. It was phenomenal. It was a really good laugh.
Yeah,
we weren't fucking very good, but it was about the experience. It was about the energy. It was, we got to dance with all the hot chicks as well, which is always good. And they're all jealous then, because they're like, fucking bastards. But then, it was a good experience. And it was a case of get the fucking ego, put it aside, and just open yourself up to new ideas, because you never know until you try. And I think that's where most people go wrong. They let the ego get in the way and just stop them from doing anything that's potentially enjoyable.
Same we see with, to be honest, a high proportion of males on a daily basis. There's something that holding them back and standing in their own way, and more often than not, it's the ego. It's that not willing to accept what other people might say, what they might think. And it's hard, when you're in a close knit group of mates or peers or anything, and you're getting banter on the daily, and you want to put yourself out and do something that's different, whether it's bettering yourself or reaching out to someone for help, or even fucking present in today's society, speaking about the way you feel. Like, how often have we both had to compress maybe the way that we feel about stuff because you don't want to speak about it?
And if there's something that you experience as well, there's lots of things that we'll experience that you and I, because we're entrepreneurial, we're very open to new ideas, and we don't have that ego that gets in our way. We're open to new things, and we know the advantages of going down the route of something different that you might not have tried before. If something's not working, or you just might want to try something new. And the thing is with that, is there's a lot of people that fucking they won't actually try something that will potentially help them at the risk of someone else thinking they're going to be judged or whatever. And I tell you what, when I started getting right into mindset, what I learned very quickly is that you've got to be careful how you explain it to people and how you try and introduce them to it. Because if you experience something that's really good for you and you really enjoy it and you get the benefit, whether it be a diet you follow, whether it be a training system, whether it be journaling, whether it be gratitude, anything like that, and you feel and see the benefit, other people might not be ready for it. So you might know the benefits and you say, look, this is really good. This can really help you. And if that person's not ready to take it in, then you've got to be really careful how you preach it upon them. Because, again, remember, an example of that would be there's a guy called Scott Harris. He's a fucking great coach. He's an Australian guy who he does a lot of the content actually for Tony Robbins at Date with Destiny. And he explained this because when you go to these events, you see, you're all hyped up and you get all this fucking new content, and it's like anything, you want to tell someone about it. You want to come back home and you want to push it onto other people and go, this is fucking amazing, this is phenomenal. And some people are like, whoa, wait a fucking minute, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And one of the presentations he gives is he says, look, he tells a story, actually. It's quite a good way he does it. He tells a story about this fucking guy who's a box. He says, there's this little box. He's a square, right? He's this little square guy, lives in a square house with a square family in a square village, drives a square car, and everything in this world is square. And he says, and one day he wants to fucking try being a triangle. So he goes out and he lives as a triangle for a little bit. He says he starts eating fucking Doritos and shit like that, and everything in his fucking life is a triangle. And then he tries to make everyone else become a triangle, and they're not ready for it. They're all like, who's this fucking weirdo? Because living life as a triangle could be like phenomenal, and it could be a happier place. It could be a more fruitful place to live.
Yeah.
If you're the only triangle and no one else is a triangle, trying to get a load of squares to be a triangle is going to be a challenge. And he says it's not about going back to your families and going back to your friends and trying to influence them to be triangles. It's about you yourself living more as a box. So become a cube, a multi-dimensional shape that is open to more things and more skilled and all the rest of it, and living life to the full by being a more fucking full version and a shape of more substance than
like a three-dimensional shape rather than a fucking 2D.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's about letting people then witness that and maybe pick up on things and give them time to then gradually see and feel the benefits from that because of the results that you might exude, for example. So if you're going to the gym for if you've never been to the gym before and you go to the gym for a week and all of a sudden you try to get 3 of your mates to go to the gym and get fucking massive because it's what you know about, but they haven't got a clue. They just think it's weird. They're like, fuck that, we're going to the pub. But then 6 months later, after you've been doing this for a long time, they start looking at you going, fuck me, he looks good.
And all of a sudden they want to emulate that.
Yeah, they want to emulate. So then they go, oh, what's this, what's that you're doing?
Gym
again?
thing you've been doing.
Yeah, it's a bit of that. So that's the way, it has to be, some people just aren't ready for change.
I really like that. There's a bit in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People called The Circle of Influence, which talks about that. And it's like, ultimately, you can't control what other people do, and nor should you try, because you're just going to piss them off. And they'll create friction in the process. But if you encapsulate something and you embody it, and you have such a positive experience, like you said, you're actually going to have a direct influence or even an indirect influence at first over them. Like, let's say, for instance, if you start journaling and you start operating with gratitude, and all of a sudden, over the course of a couple of weeks, you become less pessimistic, you become a little bit happier, you've got a different spin and take on life, and everyone's like, just wants to be around you because of the vibrations that are coming off you. Like, mate, what's changed? And so, just try this. And then it'll be more inclined rather than, like being like a fucking Herbalife rep and trying to shove something down someone's throat when they don't really necessarily want it at that point in time. Like, it's a very different approach. And I think off the back of a lot of what we've spoken about today, we're not trying to ram anything down anyone's neck. I'm not saying, right, go and sign on a dotted line, join an infantry battalion and try and join the SAS. That's not what we're saying. But there's a lot of lessons you can extrapolate from that. And hopefully it's been communicated in the way that we talk and we view the world, that have maybe opened up your eyes as listeners to, okay, maybe I'll try this, or maybe I'll try something new or give it a go, put myself outside of my comfort zone, or, join a network, a society, a community of people that have the potential to grow me as a direct result.
Yeah, so I think I went off on a massive tangent there, but you asked your question about the three lessons. Obviously, there was a visualization, the peer group, being around people who you can be influenced by in a good way. So, and I explained this in a video the other day, and it was because of a conversation I had with the client of mine, actually, and they were like, they had joined my program, and all of a sudden someone's going, what are you doing? And they tell them about it, thinking the friend's going to be like excited for them or think it's going to be a good thing, and then they just fucking go, this is, you're fucking wasting your money, or what are you doing that for? And because it's like they feel threatened by it and they're not ready, they're not quite ready because it doesn't involve them. That your success doesn't involve them. They feel
they might know
it.
They know an old identity, and you changing threatens them.
Sometimes you have to fucking burn some bridges to build some new ones. If that means cutting people away or minimizing the time that you spend with those people and spending more time with people who can actually influence you in a good way, then you got to do it. Because at the end of the day, you get one life, and it won't be that long before you end up looking back and go, what have I been fucking, you know, that saying I said last week
Eagles.
about hang with the crows, you'll never soar with the eagles. And it's fucking true. You know, you do become an average of the people you spend time around. So the visualization, the peer group, definitely, and forget the other one, but you know, it's a case of self-belief, really. Having that self-belief to not in the way that anything's possible, but it's certainly possible to try your best and give anything a go. And if you don't give it a go, you'll never fucking find out, basically.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I like what you said earlier with regards to the mirror test. If you could pass the mirror test at the beginning and end of every day and say, like, first thing in the morning, who am I going to be? What am I going to achieve today? And how do I want to feel at the end of today? And then you get to the end of the day, you look in the mirror and go, did I achieve everything I set out to achieve? And did I give it my best effort? Even if it went against me, did I give it everything I've got? If you can answer that, yes, you're squared. And if you consistently turn up on with that energy for a couple of weeks and string it together, your life will change. Hands down, no doubt about it.
Absolutely, mate. And if you're constantly getting your answers are constantly not where you want them to be. So if you can say, did I do my best in that today? No, I didn't. Okay, well, tomorrow you're going to try and improve in that. And then if you ask yourself the same question the next day, it's like, no, I didn't. At some point, it has to kick in like, fuck me, I need to get my shit together here. Because I'm constantly getting like subpar scores on this. And then you become more conscious of what you have to change. And if you're conscious of it, then you're more likely to do something about it rather than just brushing it under the carpet, which is 100%. That's what most people do.
The first step in that change is that awareness. And you, like you said earlier, you've got to make it so uncomfortable that it makes you willing of accepting change, almost like a hermit crab. Like your shell's got to be so fucked up that you want to leave it and get to a better one. And that's almost, you have to notice how bad the state of affairs have got. But you can save yourself a lot of time, energy, probably money and emotional pain by just being a bit more aware in the first case.
Absolutely.
Obviously, just being reflective. I'm very conscious of the time because I know obviously you've got an obligation to go a bit fit your little up front. Okay, cool. So, what would you say is your approach to health and fitness now, Lindsay? Because obviously you're still in wicked nick for a geezer your age. You're still in wicked nick. So, what would you say is your approach to health and fitness now? Because I know obviously we've not even touched on your bodybuilding career yet, which is prolific in itself. We'll probably get you on for another episode of that, mate, because I know people would like to hear a lot about that. But yeah, what's your approach to health and fitness now? We had a bit of a chinwag about it before we jumped on the line, you know. So what would you say is your approach now, essentially?
My approach now is kind of different to when I was competing as a bodybuilder, obviously, because back then you get that tunnel vision to such an extreme goal that, you know, your physique has to be in such an extreme condition. So therefore you have to couple that with extreme things. Obviously you've done bodybuilding, Mark, and I know you're obviously doing endurance stuff now, which is, you know, fucking absolutely nails. And if you want to do something extreme, then the lifestyle has to be extreme to go with that. It has to be congruent. Whereas you can't get someone stepping on stage as a guy who's 5% fat and have a normal, sustainable diet. It doesn't, the two just don't correlate together. So because I want to look and feel good, I want to be strong, I still want to be in decent shape. It's a case of just being at that point where it's not quite as extreme. So you still do the shit you had to do. You still go to the gym. You still train. You still lift weights. You still get up, do your cardio purely for health purposes and to keep your body fat down. And when you're making food choices, you just have to eat like a fucking grown-up, you know.
Eating like a toddler at a birthday party.
And my program, I've got on my personal program for my clients called the Modern Warrior. And there's three main pillars to that. And one of the, is you've got Awaken the Warrior, which is like the mindset element. Then you got Build the Warrior, which is a training element. It's very simple to follow. And then you get Feed the Warrior. So I say, and I work with just men over 30, very particular market, similar to what you do. When I'm talking about Feed the Warrior, it's not about putting you on a diet that's unsustainable. Yeah, that will work to get you in shape, but it won't be long-term sustainable. So I just follow some basic rules. I eat a few solid meals a day, which are pretty healthy, high in protein, moderate carbs, some healthy fats. I eat proper food, morning till night, with the odd bit of shit in there sometimes, admittedly. But if I want to dial it in a little bit, then that'll come out, and it's just a case of making a minor adjustment. I exercise pretty much cardio-wise every day. I walk my dog, I go for a walk, I get my steps in. So the basic laws I follow really is eat fucking a handful of solid meals a day that are healthy. Get my steps in at a minimum 10,000 steps a day, and I train 5 days a week. That's it. I have the weekends off. You know, I tend to take the weekends off from my kids. I'll train on a Saturday morning. Actually, it's one of my training days. I have a Wednesday off, and I have a Sunday off. That's my 2 off days with training. But other than that, I'll train every day.
I think that's what people need to hear. Is that it's about consistently doing basics to a decent standard.
Really, really basics, and just find something you enjoy. I mean, I've tried other types of training, but I just enjoy bodybuilding training. It's just what I've always gone back to. I enjoy it. It makes me feel good. I know what I'm doing with it. I get results. It's good for your physique. You know, I'm not going to be able to get up tomorrow and do what you do, with the bike and the swimming and all that sort of stuff. You know, that's something that needs to be...
for me, I enjoyed bodybuilding for years. I trained in a very specific way, very similar to you, for probably going on 8 years. The thing for me was I was just falling out of love with it a little bit for no reason other than I didn't have a specific goal. Then I tore my pec, and I was like, but then, you know, someone happened to approach me at the right moment in my life when I was feeling a little bit of pain, like we spoke about my current situation. And I felt like I was coasting in life, and I was going through the mill, going through the motions in training. And I thought, you know what, it's time for a new challenge. And I like you said, I surrounded myself with the right community, because you know what, I had to go for an identity shift. I still am, of being the guy who was referred to as like big lad or big roadie or tank. You know, when you've been 100 odd kilos, and all of a sudden you're like 10 stone wet through because you're rapping on a bike.
That's an interesting one actually, mate. Yeah, because it's a bit like someone who's overweight. You know, it's an identity change at the end of the day. You know, they're going to have to be ready for that.
It makes you feel uncomfortable. And like, there's an element of my unconscious mind now even that's like, mate, get back on a gear. Seriously, it's like, mate, get back in the gear. Stick some training. No one will know, because I want to get back to the kind of muscularity that I used to have. I want to eat in the same way. When I go in the gym, sometimes my mind wanders and think, oh, I should stick some fucking bicep curls and lat raises on here, because I think I still want to have a rig. The reality is that ain't going to help me swim the channel in 2 years. I've got to accept the new identity. So in order to facilitate that, I've surrounded myself. Like, I've joined a cycling club, I've joined a swimming club, I've joined a running club. So I'm around people who have been successful at what I want to achieve. Absolutely. And then if I emulate them, I'm not then as concerned. Like, the chances are in 2 years' time, I'll be on Up Massive again. Like, because I do enjoy that, and that's always given me something to rely upon, because I do love it. But the key thing, what I'm dialing is on what you said is, no matter what your discipline is or what you want to achieve, what you want to look like, it's a sliding scale. It's not on or off. It's not like, okay, I'm going to be on my diet now, or I'm going to be off it, and I'm going to make like bad decisions with my food. It's a sliding scale. Like, you can enjoy that bit of sort of shit food, for want of a better phrase. But if you know you're going on a fucking holiday in a few weeks, just rein it in a little bit. Yeah,
that's what. It's just a case of it's like a pedal in a car. You do a little bit more, a little bit less, and learn to know your body as well. And I think now that I'm in my 40s, I'm 43 now, and I think I'm thinking ahead in a way that, you know, I've got that kind of desire to do something extreme, like what you're doing. So I thought about it a little while ago myself, actually, but it was actually just before I tore my bicep. So I tore my bicep last year and ruptured it off the bone, which did set me back. Obviously, I've got to be quite careful now what I do. It's just one of those things. But I've dabbled with the idea of doing something extreme, whether it be for charity, whether it be just to compete for myself, for my own sort of my own benefit or my own goals. But at the same time, I'm thinking, I want to be doing this shit when I'm an old man. You know, I want to be training. I want to be healthy. I want to be as fit as I can looking forward. And I think a lot of that comes with experience. And it's a bit like when you think about money, there are things I wished I'd done with my money back in my 20s that I kick myself for now, because I think, fuck me, I'd have made a fortune if I'd bought a house instead of like blowing it all on the piss every single weekend.
Yeah.
Or buying cars and shit like that. So there's things you can learn from your past when it comes to things like finances, and when it comes to your health. When it comes to health, I think, you know, what is the goal here? I want to be around for as long as I can. I want to be as healthy for as long as I can. I don't want to be one of those decrepit old fuckers that his hips have gone. And so many people, by the way, guys in the regiment are classic for this. They still continue to do things like run on the road in their fucking, you know, through their fucking 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And when they get into the 50s, so many of them now, they're needing hip replacements, knee replacements, and they're all battered and bruised. And then that mentally affects you as well. So I'm thinking, I can learn by their mistakes. You know, it was very much back then. It was a case of just, you know, put your fucking DMS boots on and go for a run. There wasn't as much to learn from that there is today. And I think we can really, really learn by those before us that have made the mistakes and make sure we don't make those mistakes. And one of those things for me is having longevity with training. That's why I tend to like bodybuilding style training, not to the extreme that I was maybe when I was trying to get massive, because I don't want to be massive anymore. I just want to have some good muscle, have a decent physique, have low body fat levels, and feel good. You know, that's the main thing. Have energy. The main thing for me these days, and that's the thing going back to bodybuilding. When I was a bodybuilder and I was heavy, and I didn't have energy. You know, I was fucking tired all the time.
Yeah,
it was actually quite a sluggish way. It was actually quite a fucking depressing.
It made me uncomfortable. Like I'd working in a gym in off season. I'd be 100 kilos, and the lads would be like, "Oh mate, we're nipping off down the coffee shop. Do you want to come?" I knew it was a mile away, and I'd be like, "Can we get an Uber?" Because otherwise I ain't making it back in 20 minutes. I'll be in the back wheezing.
I don't want to lose weight.
I have like a fucking shin pump and a calf pump just walking down the road. Get upstairs and you need a minute at the top.
Yeah.
It's an uncomfortable way to live. So that was actually me, for us, a turning point. I realised the guys that are continuing to win shows in my category, I thought hats off to them. They deserve it, because I'm not willing to do that anymore. I want to go my own way.
The thing is, mate, no one wants to be a useless fucking meathead anyway. I mean, for me, that's your goal, fine. If your goal is to be a bodybuilder and be a champion bodybuilder, fine. You got to do what you got to do. But for me now, a guy in my 40s and someone who wants to lead from the front, someone who wants to be an example to other men my age and around that age, I have to have that energy, that drive. I have to have that, be that living example of what I'm trying to preach.
Exactly. I mean, and I don't want to go on the route of slating bodybuilders, because for a time in my life I loved it. I lived and breathed it, and I still appreciate the sport now.
I still love it.
But my quality of life, I would argue, is a lot higher, because I'm able to do things on a daily basis I enjoy. If I go for a coffee and I think, you know what, I'm going to have a fucking muffin, crack on. Like, whereas I spent a long time in my life not even eating the Sunday roast Mum had made, because it didn't fit my macros and I couldn't track it. Yeah. And that's the sad reality of it. Yeah, so I have every ounce of respect for people that want to do it. But for me, and obviously with the Hard to Kill program, it's about, as you alluded to, being very good at a multitude of disciplines. And feeling fit, healthy, energized, and like having the cognition to do things to a very high standard on a daily basis.
That's it, mate. That's a Mars.
Yeah. Awesome. So again, I'm very conscious of time, mate, but first and foremost, I want to thank you for giving us your time and appearing on the podcast. It's been absolutely awesome speaking to you, Lindsay, mate. As you said, you know, we've not touched on probably half the questions I had here, but we've just gone off on a tangent. It's been really enjoyable as a result of that. So I'd definitely love to have you back on again in the future.
Absolutely.
If people want to follow you in the meantime, whereabouts can they find you, mate?
So my Instagram is the Lindsay Bruce. So if you want to post it on yours or whatever, I think you post it on your socials anyway. But my Instagram is the Lindsay Bruce, LINDSAY BRUCE. And then obviously I'm on Facebook as well. But I think you're maxed out in friends on Facebook. You probably just follow me on Facebook as well.
Popular bloke.
Sorry.
Popular bloke.
Fucking weirdos, mate.
Superb. Awesome. Right, we'll wrap it up there then, mate. But again, thank you very much for your time. We'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on the podcast, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, mate.